Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Paddock Talk podcast. Today is episode number 4, and we're going to be giving you our predictions and preview for the upcoming F1 2021 season. We're very excited to be doing this. We've just been watching pre-season over the last couple of days, and we're going to give you our constructor championship standings, who's going to win the teammate battles, and then in the end, we're going to have some random quick-fire predictions from everyone at the end. I think we should just get straight into it. I'm going to start with the constructor predictions, and I'm going to go from the reverse order that they finished in last year. So first up is Williams. They had a pretty solid pre-season test. They completed 373 laps, which was the sixth best, and did a time. Their best time was a 1 minute 30.1, which was also the sixth best, set by George Russell on the C5, which is the quickest tires. And he said that that lap wasn't full quality spec, but he said that they didn't have the sandbags on, so to speak. So it was pretty good indicator of what the performance is. One key takeaway from them as well, though, is that they said that their car is very wind sensitive, and I'm not sure if anyone watched preseason, but on day one, sorry, and pretty much throughout the whole of Bahrain, it was very, very windy. So I don't think it was the best track for them. And George said that this will most likely mean they'll have a bit of a yo-yo year where some tracks they're going to be really good at, or not really good, but very solid at, and some tracks they might not be great at. And that was a conscious effort to maximize peak downforce with their aero package. So when it works, it really does work, but when it's not working, it will be quite bad. And they're already going to be bringing in new upgrades for early rounds this year. So it's been much better than they have been the last few years. Obviously, that whole 2019 saga where team members were flying out bits to the test. I mean, that was just a shambles. So they are on that road to a rebuild. And personally, I think they're going to finish 9th this year. And I don't think it'll be any surprise to say that I think George Russell will also come out on top against Nicholas Latifi. What do you guys think?
Yeah, likewise, I think that Williams will be ninth in the constructors. I think that this year they're going to be a lot more closer to the back of the midfield, but I don't think they're going to challenge it too much. I also, as well, think that Russell will beat Latifi just because of the caliber of driver he is, but I don't think it will be as convincing in qualifying this year, though.
So the next team is Haas. They again had a pretty solid preseason. They completed 394 laps, which was the fifth best, and had a best time of a 1 minute 31.5 set on the C4s by Nikita Mazepin, and that was the 10th of the time. They had they had a pretty solid running. They on the morning of day one they had a slight issue which took away quite a lot of running for Mick Schumacher, but apart from that, they were very solid. They haven't spent any tokens coming into this year. They've done a few minor tweaks. There were actually a few new parts being tested, but there's no upgrades planned as well throughout the year. And that's really it. I mean, they both did pretty solid running. And I think they will finish bottom for that reason. They're just not going to really develop the car. They've not really made a step forward, and it will just be a learning experience for the two rookie drivers they have. And of those two, I do think that Mick Schumacher will come out on top. What do you guys think?
See, I also think that Haas will finish last. I don't really think that's, a groundbreaking thing to say or controversial. I think that their preparation they've had this year has not been optimal. Obviously, they only really fired the car up before testing. Luckily, they've gone through testing without any major issues, so that's a good thing for them. But I just think that the fact they haven't really developed the car, haven't used any tokens, I don't think they're going to be challenging anyone. They're going to be in sort of, I think, the no man's land that Williams was last year, where they're just that little bit off the back of the midfield. In terms of the teammate battle, I think that Mazepin's actually going to win. I'm not going to say it's because he's going to get like a fifth place or something like that. I think it's going to be incredibly close between the two of them. and it'll probably go down to something like, you know, a freak 10th place at like Monaco or somewhere like that, the same way like way that, like, you know, Bianchi beat Chilton, that type of thing. Not to say that, you know, that's anything bad, but I just don't think they're going to have the car really to have a incredibly close teammate battle.
Yep, like you two, I've also put Haas last. I think the car looks all right, but I don't think it's going to be anything special. The fact that they haven't used any tokens as well, I think they're fully focused on 2022. As well, the rookie drivers, I think out of the two, I think Mick should come out on top. I'd expect that, but I think it would go down to, like, I don't think they're going to get any points this season, so it's going to be a case of who gets the highest non-point score and finish. But I think overall, I think they are going to be quite a bit off in plumb last.
And if we move on to the next team, which is Alfa Romeo, they had a very, very reliable test, if you want to say that, because they did complete the joint most laps, 422. And they also did some quick running as well. They did the fourth best time of the test session, which was a 1 minute 29.7, which was set by Kimi on the C5s on the last day. I mean, you can take it from that lap count. I mean, they had a very, very solid car, no real issues. They said that it's a decent balance, but there's not a load of downforce. So probably Bahrain is probably maybe suited to their car characteristics. And their main aim is just going to be to try and catch back up to the main midfield group we saw last year, that sort of Group C category with Haas, Williams, and Alfa Romeo. And their aim is just going to be to try to get away from that and try and breach into that midfield. But like we'll get onto, that midfield is just insanely competitive. So for that reason, I do have Alfa Romeo in 8th place yet again, and I also have Kimi Räikkönen beating Giovinazzi because I just think, well, he might be old and he might be, you know, blocking other drivers. I still think he has it in him to beat Giovinazzi, because I'm not Giovinazzi's biggest fan. What do you guys think?
I have put Alfa Romeo in 8th, so no change there really. I think that their car looks nice. They've spent some tokens developing the front nose cone, from what I can gather, and, you know, they've had a very, very smooth testing, considering it's only been 3 days and 422 laps or something like that. That's very, very good over 3 days. I don't really look at times in testing, so I'm not going to say, you know, that they're going to be, you know, fighting in the middle of the midfield, but I think that there's a chance they could be a little bit closer to the midfield if they play their cards right. In terms of the teammate battle, I actually think that Giovinazzi is going to beat Raikkonen. Not, you know, in a convincing manner. You know, last year he matched Raikkonen pretty much the entire season. And I think that his growth and, I say, thought of momentum will probably carry through to this season, and he'll probably will beat him, but it's not going to be anything like, you know, 50 points to say 9 points or something like that.
Yeah, like Nat, I've also got Alfa Romeo in 8th. I think they're a very solid team. I think they're going to make a good progress this year, and they're going to try and latch onto the lower midfield and break away from the Group C that it's been dubbed as, with Haas and Williams. I think they've had a really promising pre-season. The cars ran well. Giovinazzi and Raikkonen seem like quite comfortable in the car. But I think out of the two, I think it should be Giovinazzi. I think last year's car performance kind of hid Giovinazzi's development that year. So I think this year, do think Giovinazzi should beat Raikkonen, but I think it will be close between the two.
So moving on to the next team, AlphaTauri. They had the joint number of laps with Alfa Romeo, 2 Alphas. They also did 422 laps. And they did a rather eye-catching quali sim with Tsunoda at the end of day 3, which gave them the second best time of a 129.0 on the C5s. And it was pretty much confirmed it was a glory run by Tsunoda. He was using the DRS way before the detection points. So don't read too much into those times. They're not actually going to be, you know, a 10th off Red Bull. But it seems to be a very solid package, and more importantly, one where the drivers can really push and find the limits of, which I think will be important because, while it might be great that you have a really quick car, being able to find that limit and be able to push it, so is really important. So I think that's where they're going to have those gains. So maybe early on in the season they might be really good, but maybe tail off at the end of the season. But I mean, it seems harsh because, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but trying to get this midfield pecking order sorted is just impossible. So it may seem harsh, but I have them in 7th just because I think the other cars probably are a bit quicker. But there's no doubt this AlphaTauri is a very, very solid car, and on its day, it will be able to get podiums and it will be able to get, really strong, 4th or 5ths. And I've also gone with Gasly, which I think is a surprise. I think Tsunoda will probably have just be a learning year for him. He seems to have incredible raw speed, but just harnessing that and just getting that consistency, I think, will be really important for him this year. What do you guys think?
I concur with you when you say about how hard it is to predict the midfield, especially this part. When you predict in the lower end, it's quite easy because you can sort of go off stuff. But with AlphaTauri, putting them in a spot, it's difficult. I've put them in 7th as well because I think that compared to the teams ahead of them, I think that they don't have that much of a strong lineup because of the fact they have Tsunoda. While he's a really good talent, I think that he will probably be a little bit hindrance to their points total. Not in a negative way, obviously, because I think he's going to be very impressive this year, but I don't think he's going to be that impressive that it helps them progress a lot up the grid. I think they're going to be close challengers with the rest of the midfield team, but I think they're just going to be that little bit behind them in terms of, I think, just across the season with development. I've also gone with Gasly to win the teammate battle. Unsurprisingly, he's the more experienced driver out of the two of them, and I think it'll be a pretty comfortable win because of the fact that Tsunoda's a rookie. But I think towards the end of the season, Tsunoda will probably start to match him or just be a little bit less than a 10th off average, I think.
Yep, like with you guys, I've also got AlphaTauri 7th. I think they've got a really good base for the team building off last year. And I think as well the lineup that they have is very, very underrated. I think the dynamic of Gasly and Tsunoda will be very beneficial for them. Although I don't think they're going to be able to latch onto the rest of the midfield yet. But I think in the future they could be. But at the moment, I think it's going to be Gasly who takes the battle against Tsunoda. I think Gasly's a very, very good driver, and we saw that last year. And although Tsunoda's very quick, I still think this year is going to be a massive learning curve for him. So I think overall Gasly should comfortably beat him. But I think as we see later on in the season, as Nat said, I think it's going to get a little bit closer between.
So moving on, we have Ferrari next. They did. I was quite surprised by this. They actually did the 3rd most laps, 404. They actually broke down, and I think they won. Broke down on track, which is quite a rare sight because the reliability this year has just been ridiculous, as you might expect. They set the 3rd quickest time as well, with a 1:29.6. Sainz did a quali run on the C4s on the last evening session. And the general mood seems to be that they're encouraged by what they've seen, but it's nothing special. It's definitely a step on from last year, but the feeling is that they've not regained a huge amount of time and are suddenly back into that top 3 with Mercedes and Red Bull. I think they're still going to be in that midfield fight, but it's just so hard to point where they're going to be. And I mean, we say every year, but the midfield just gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And I genuinely think, I mean, we could be seeing the top 70 teams separated by a second in quali. I mean, it's just going to be, it's so close and track dependent if a driver can get a good lap in. But I mean, it's going to be really exciting. But going back to Ferrari, they've got a new engine and that's been working well. They've done some aero tweaks, that's been working well. And they've also got a new rear suspension, which has been working well. So the stuff that they have brought to the car has been working well. But yeah, like I say, there's no one sort of overly convinced that they have escaped that midfield pack. But with the drivers they have, we saw with Leclerc last year, he can push that, he can drag that car up right to the front. But I have them in 5th this year. And I also have Leclerc winning the teammate rivalry. What do you guys have?
So I also have Ferrari in fifth. I think that their package is going to be sort of not middle ground, because obviously fifth is literally the middle of the pack. But I think it's going to be, because it's so close in the midfield, I think their package is going to be really good on some tracks, but there's going to be a few tracks where they are really, really missing out compared to their rivals, because obviously Ferrari aren't used to running in midfield. They're used to being at the front. So they're still learning that balance of getting a car that can compete in the midfield and the upper echelons in the midfield. They have a really good driver lineup, regardless of what their car is, with Sainz and Leclerc. I think Leclerc's going to win the not the title, the teammate battle.
That'd be brave.
No, I think he's going to win the teammate battle. It's quite an obvious one, I think. Sainz is there to be a number two, but isn't going to be a number two. That type of thing. You've been told he's got equal status, but I don't think he's going to beat Leclerc, just because I think Leclerc obviously is in that higher tier of talent-wise and is still learning as well. But I think that they've got a really good package, and them being fifth doesn't mean that they're going to have a terrible season. It's just the midfield is so hard to predict.
Yep, I've also put Ferrari down as fifth. I think they had a very, very rough season last year, obviously. And although I think they are going to make progress, I don't think it's going to be that much of a step forward. I think the real step forward we are going to see with them is in 2022. But I do think they are going to make a step forward nonetheless. I think the engine's going to be much better this year. In regards to the teammate battle, I think it should be Leclerc that obviously comfortably does it, and I don't think that's really, it's not controversial at all, is it really? Although Sainz is a very, very good driver, Leclerc's on that calibre of level where he's an elite driver, and he should really be comfortably beating a driver like Carlos Sainz. But I think overall, fifth place will be a good season for them.
Yeah, it just seemed odd, doesn't it, putting Ferrari fifth? But
yeah,
with
it
the
does
teams
kind of play with you when you usually
yeah,
have
but I think the
consistent
teams
top
in
three.
front, the teams in front are just a little bit better, and obviously we'll get onto them a bit later. But with some of those drives that Leclerc did, I mean, I'm a big fan of Vettel, so I don't want to go overly harsh on him, but he did let that team down. If he could match the performances that Leclerc did, they would have been. I mean, Leclerc finished on 98 points and 8th, but only about
he
10
beat Norris.
points behind. Yeah, he beat Norris. He beat
And
Norris,
that
and he was
Ferrari
7
was
points behind the Red Bull.
Yeah. That Ferrari was a tractor pretty much
Exactly.
last year.
So
yeah, Leclerc did wonders with that car.
Exactly. So when I think if he does those performances again, and he made quite a lot of mistakes last year in Italy, in
Austria.
Sakir, Austria, exactly. So it's Ferrari could easily finish third here. They get their act together, but with those teams in front,
so tight, that midfield.
Yeah, it's just
so
like I say, it's just ridiculously
it's just about
tight.
executing and getting a little bit of luck
Exactly
on their side, which is mental.
Yeah, so let's move on now. Next team is Alpine. They did 396 laps, which put them fourth in the lap leaderboards. But interestingly enough, they only had the 8th fastest time overall, with a 1 minute 30.3. That is, if I can read my own handwriting, which was set by Alonso on the C4s. They really didn't do any sort of quick running. They were just very, very solid. Quite a low profile session for them. Didn't really have any dramas. The only thing that was sort of noteworthy was their chonky airbox, which caught the eye of many. The airbox is very, very wide, sort of harks back to a 1970s Ligier or those era of cars with the huge airboxes over the top. They said that they did that because they thought they actually removed a lot of the cooling from the sideboards to make them narrower, and thought, why don't we just stick them on top? So always interesting to see different teams how they approach things. But yeah, like I say, nothing special, nothing stunning from them, but they just built a really solid base to go off. We saw Alonso back in the car. He had a cycling accident, but he seemed to be didn't really seem to affect him, and he seemed to be getting straight back into the swing of things. And I've put them 6th, which again just seems so harsh, but it's not. They're going to be 11th and 12th every weekend. They're still going to be around the top 10. And we saw with Ricardo last year and Ocon, they have potential to be best of the midfield, and it will be like that. We get to different tracks and different teams will be at the top of the midfield. And I've also got looking at this now, I'm not sure, but I've got Alonso beating Ocon in the teammate rivalry, which seems harsh because Ocon was getting up to speed. But I just think, from what I saw from Alonso preseason testing, even though you can't really into the lap time, he just seemed very, very comfortable straight away. And we know what Fernando's like. He will push that team to the limit, and he has that sort of aura, for good or bad, which will sort of make things more favourable towards him. And just sort of, I mean, let's not forget, he won his 2 world titles with Renault, and he does have that emotional connection with the Enstone team. And I just think he'll just be able to get one over on Ocon. But Ocon actually said that with Ricardo, maybe he was a bit of a too friendly relationship. With Perez, it brought out the best in him because he was, he was sort of fighting against someone and really, he had to prove to someone or prove to the world that he could do it. I think it'll be a fascinating team dynamic, but I've gone for Alonso. What do you guys have?
So, while the Alpine car is top 2 in looks, I've put it 6th for its on-track performance this year. I think that, while it is harsh, as you said, to put a team in 6th place and say, like, yeah, you can be the 6th best team, but I don't think that's going to be like it means that over the year they were the 6th best. I think they're going to have some races where they're really, really on it, and then other races where they can just be nowhere in comparison. I mean,
just a bit meh.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just. Also, I think that Renault have that historical tendency to also like have more failures than other teams. I know it's like 2 years ago, but I think it was Bahrain 2019. And I'm pretty sure both of their cars retired in the last few laps or something like that. Yeah, on the same corner, and they lost a really good point haul. And
Ocon had quite a lot of unreliability last year as well.
Exactly. Ricardo had some bits of unreliability as well. And I think as well, I'm not going to say Ricardo is a better driver than Alonso because Alonso's a 2-time world champion. But I think right now, Ricardo's better to be in that seat than Alonso is as well. So I think losing Ricardo is going to be a big thing. So I think that it'll take a little bit of time for Fernando to get a little bit up to speed, sort of how we saw with Ocon. It won't take as long as Ocon because Fernando is an elite level talent. But I think could he's been out of the seat for 2 years instead of Ocon's just 1 year, I think that will sort of play on his mind a little bit. I think Ocon's also going to win the teammate battle. Not to say that he's going to, destroy Alonso, but I think that lineup is really evenly matched when you put all things into perspective. And, as you said with Ocon, when he fights someone who is like, not a friend to him in some regards, it does bring out the best of him. 2018, 2017, he was very, very good. 2018 especially, I'm pretty sure he beat Perez on head-to-head that season. And it was almost a comfortable victory as well. But obviously Perez was just able to get those extra results compared to Ocon. Obviously, Ocon was blocked by Perez and got hit by Perez a couple of times and hit Perez back as well. So there's that tendency, potential tendency, but I think that he's going to have a little bit of an edge over Fernando.
Yeah, I feel like we're all reading on the same predictions here because I've also got Alpine in 6th. But I think the case of Alpine, again, the midfield is just so tight to call. And this is not to say Alpine's gonna have a bad season or a worse season than last year. I still think they're going to be very on form, but I do think the ranking of that midfield is going to be totally different each weekend. It's going to be totally different. It's that close to call. I think they do seem quite well set up for this year as well. Last year's car was very, very good. I think the Alonso coming into the team as well, that's going to be a massive boost for them as a whole. Although I have got my reservations about that cycling injury and the effects of that, even though he has said it's fine. Obviously, you just don't know how much that, like, over a course of a really long race distance and an intense race schedule, how that's going to affect him. The teammate battle, as a result of that, I've put Ocon ahead of Alonso because I know it's known that when Ocon has a good car under him, he can deliver consistent results. And I think the case of last year was just he was adapting back into the sport because he'd been out of it for a whole year. And although I think it's going to be tight between Alonso and Ocon, I think that just consistency from Ocon to deliver very solid results over Alonso, who's not only got an injury, but also coming back in after 2 years out. I think Ocon should have it really, and I think it's Ocon's win to take.
Okay, so moving on, we've got Aston Martin next, and they didn't have an ideal pre-season. If you had to say who had the most comfortable, they'd probably be worse. They had probably the most issues as well, and as a result, they only completed 314 laps, which was the 9th best. And they had a best lap time of 130.4, which was also the 9th best, set by Stroll and C5s. Like I say, it was fairly frustrating for them. They had a lot of small niggling issues. Had an electrical glitch, a gearbox issue, a turbo issue, and as a result, Seb actually managed the least number of laps out of anyone. But when you counter that, Stroll actually did, I think, the 6th most or something. So it wasn't all doom and gloom. And the car has the most important thing is that car still has pace. It hasn't lost a load of performance from last year. It was the 3rd best car last year. They just couldn't quite do it, and they also lost points due to the brake duct saga. So without that, they would have actually finished 3rd. But that car hasn't lost pace at all. They just haven't found we just haven't seen enough really of it yet. We would have liked to see them do some sort of quali sims, but that will come over the course of the year. They've got a new suspension which they were able to get without any tokens being used from the Mercedes last year, and yeah, I just think I think they've not gone under the radar because they didn't. It's really difficult, but to explain. But they just sort of whenever I saw them, they always just had C1s or C2s on and just going round and round, or they were in the garage fixing an issue. So maybe underwhelming is the right word, but I have actually put them 3rd because I just think if they're able to extract the maximum of that car, they will be in a very, very, very good shape. And I think with Vettel coming in, he seems, even though he had those issues, he just seems very relaxed in his interviews and not too worried. I think he's just getting on with it. They do have still a lot of data to go over, and it maybe take him a couple of races to get up to speed. With Lance Stroll as well, we saw last year those immense flashes of talent, like in Turkey, like in Hungary, like in Mugello and Monza, and he's I think he's still
as well.
Yeah, he's still got bits. He's still got to find. He's just got to.
He's very
still
raw.
got a little bit to prove. Yeah, he's just still got. He's working. He's chipping away at his critics. He's defeated most of them, but there's still just a few lingering ones left. After he had that quite rough spell, which most of it wasn't his fault last year. But if he just pieces a season together, I think he's improving all the time. And I mean, there's pretty much no one better to learn off than a Seb Vettel. They seem to be getting on pretty well. And he's going to learn so much from having Seb, a 4-time world champion, next to him. So yeah, I've gone for them in 3rd, but I've also gone for Vettel winning the teammate rivalry. Who do you guys have? Where do you guys have Aston Martin?
So I have Aston actually in 4th. So I think that they're going to have a really good package, as the same as they had last season. I think that they're going to be very strong as well. But for me, their lineup has the ability to either be really, really good or just above average. Stroll, we saw it last year. At the start of the season, he was immense. was on top of Perez for most of the first half of the season. Then he had that little blip from Mugello to, I'd say, like Bahrain, where it just seemed like things weren't going his way, even with that Istanbul qualifying. And there's that tendency to him that it could happen again. If it doesn't happen and he's on it, then they've got a really good car with him. On the other side of the garage, you have Vettel, and obviously with Vettel, he's a bit of an unknown quantity in the midfield. The last time he was in the midfield with an actual midfield car and a midfield team, he was really, really good in 2008. Last year, obviously, he didn't perform anywhere near what he should have been. Could that have been because of the way the car was set up? Maybe. Could it have been because of hostilities in the team? Maybe. But I think that if they're on it, they've got a really strong package and they could get third. But I think because there's that potential for it to just go a little bit wrong at one point during the season, not like say 10 races, but there's maybe a 4-race span where they're just 8th and 9th instead of being 5th and 6th or whatever. That could cost them in the long run. I think that Vettel's going to win the teammate battle. I think his experience is going to be too much for Stroll. It won't be a super close battle, but it also won't be a really, decisive battle. I think it's going to be, 20 points or something like that. And those 20 points will probably be because of like a bit of an issue with the car or something like that. You talk about their test, and there's Taylor said something about it actually. I know he's not with us today, but he said that McLaren had a really good test apparently, but Aston Martin had a terrible one. Yet Aston Martin did 13 laps less than McLaren. So, it's. I think there's different narratives for those teams, and I think there's a lot more expectation with Aston Martin because of the whole hype around it. And if that bubble bursts, it bursts, but I don't think it will. So that's why I think I put them fourth.
Yeah, like with you now, I've also put Aston Martin fourth. I think they're going to be a very good team this year. I think the dynamic of having Vettel and Stroll in the team is going to be really, really good for the team. I think Vettel is going to be quite rejuvenated this year, and I think we're going to see him back at his best, hopefully. I think those last year at Ferrari was very, very rough and quite a bit of a downfall, really. And in the case of Stroll, I think if he can just find that consistency that he's been lacking so much last year. I know the COVID diagnosis didn't really help his case in that matter, but I think if he finds that consistency, then he's going to be a really, really good driver for them, and maybe even push him further up the order. But I think at the moment, I think it's going to be Vettel that comfortably beats Stroll, unless Stroll can find his consistency, and in that case, it would probably be a bit closer to call. But I think overall, they're going to be fourth, with Vettel as the leading driver.
Okay, so up next is McLaren, as they finish third in the championship last year. They, like you say, Nat, they didn't actually do that many laps in the end. They only did 327, which was the 8th most, with a best lap of a 1 minute 30.1, which was the 6th best, set by Ricciardo on the C4s. Yeah, just very, very quite understated, really. They had quite a conservative run plan, but from a perspective of reliability, it was a pretty amazingly seamless transition, because this car was not designed with the Mercedes engine in mind, and they've spent all of their tokens just adapting their car to fit the Mercedes. So no developments elsewhere. So it is pretty much the car that they ended up with at the end of last year. But I mean, there's not really a lot to say on them from pre-season. I mean, they just had they just went through the processes, went through their run plan. Ricciardo seemed to be up to speed fine. Norris did his thing, and just seems to be another solid year for McLaren. As you might have guessed, where I had Aston Martin, I have them in fourth. again, they're not going to be finishing 7th and 8th every race. They're going to be at the top of the midfield. Ricardo's really going to enjoy that environment. He'll probably definitely sneak a few podiums here and there. And I also have Ricardo beating that teammate battle. I think if Ricardo can just translate his best form into the car immediately, if we saw at Renault, he took a little bit to get up to speed. But I think if he's able to get into that car and just perform straight away, I think Norris could be in for a bit of a shock. But at the same time, Norris has had 2 years now. He's been developing quite nicely, and if he's always quick and quali. So I just think, yep, bring it on. It'll be a good little rivalry. They do seem a bit more serious than you might expect. I think a lot of people, looking at you, Simon Lazenby, thought it was going to be a little jokey, yes, they're a bromance, but I don't think they're really too bothered about that. Yes, they're going to get on well, but I think the media ran with that a little bit. But yeah, that's what I have.
So with McLaren, I've got them third. I think there's not really you can't really argue with that a lot. Obviously, with the midfield, it's hard to predict. I think McLaren, they're going to be at the top of it anyway, with the way they've been the last couple of years. But I think them getting third all relies on Norris's performance. I think, while he's been good the last couple of years, I think he's gotten away with not being good enough. He's been comfortably beaten the last couple of years by Sainz. Obviously, his first season, 47 points, it's not too bad, but compared to Sainz, he should have been a lot higher up. Than last season, you look at all of the bad luck that affected McLaren, it all affected one side of the garage compared to Norris. So he should have had a higher points total. He should have beaten Leclerc. He definitely should have beaten Albon. So I think that if he can fire on all cylinders, like his junior career and his potential has pointed towards, he can definitely help McLaren solidify themselves in third. I think Ricciardo's going to win the teammate battle because Ricciardo is an elite level talent. He's that person that could sneak a championship if things fall the right way, like a Jenson Button type of thing. He seems a lot more serious this year. He said in interviews before season testing and even before the car was revealed that he's not actually going to be this mean team with Lando. He wants to beat Lando. He wants to assert dominance in this team because he's a new person coming into it. I think that they're going to have a good car because of the last few years, and I think that they're still going to be third and better the rest.
Yep, again, I've also put McLaren third. Now, the strange thing is with my prediction, I think if you asked me this a week ago, I would have put them lower down because I had a bit my reserves about how reliable they'd be, given such the short space of time implementing the Mercedes power unit into their current chassis. But I think the test has shown that they've done that very well. So I've got them third because I think they came third last year with a team pairing of Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris. And there's no disrespect to Carlos Sainz, but I think Daniel Ricciardo is a far better driver than he is. So I think they're just going to be even better this year and score even more points. Lando Norris is now even better than he was last year, probably, given that he's that natural development. So I think, even though I think Ricciardo will beat Norris, I think that teammate pairing is going to be a very, very strong lineup. And I do hope it's going to be a very, very close one as well. I hope we see a proper rivalry between the two. Because I do think that McLaren this year, I think we could see a really big rise from them. I think they could be clear midfield favourites. Maybe even pushing the top two. We'll never know until we see the first round.
Yes, indeed. So getting to the top two then, Red Bull. So they did the 7th most laps, 369, and they had the fastest lap overall with a 1 minute 28.9 set by Verstappen on the C4s. And to be honest, from their perspective, couldn't have really gone better. New Honda engine worked perfectly. Verstappen said that the car was responding well to setup changes, which is always a good thing. He was able to push the car. I don't know if you ever saw any onboards, but he just seemed to be really, really comfortable within the car. And Red Bull say that it is the best prepared they've been in the hybrid era, even though they seem to say that every year. But I don't want to fall into the trap of Red Bull because we've seen it time and time again. But I genuinely think they are going to be closer this year, and I think we'll obviously get onto Mercedes, but it's just I really, really hope it's going to be tight, and I hope I'm being deliberately pessimistic here, so I get to be proven wrong. But I just think Mercedes are, as Thanos once said, inevitable. I just think they are they're just such a well-oiled machine, and Red Bull have had so many false dawns and failed and broken promises. But the driver lineup has been strongest they've had in the last few years, with Sergio Perez, and he seems to have got on fine. I think he said he'd probably rather do maybe a few more, maybe a couple of more days just to get up to speed and familiarized with the Red Bull, procedures and everything. But I think he'll do well. I think what Red Bull need as well is what they wanted from a Gasly and Albon is to just be in that fight with the Mercedes. Even if he doesn't need to be out qualifying Verstappen. That's not what they want. They just need him to be, 3 seconds behind in fourth, and so Mercedes can't gang up on Verstappen. If Perez is in fourth, a couple of seconds behind, and he pits early. Well, now one of the Mercedes now has to cover off Perez. So now, it just creates that strategy which you sometimes need. We've seen with Mercedes. Look back at 2018 Monza comes to the top of my head. One of the Mercedes pits early, and you force Raikkonen to pit, and then Bottas is blocking Raikkonen, and Raikkonen destroys his tires, and then Hamilton easily wins the race. So something like that. You need that sort of dynamic between the drivers. You need him to be there, and Red Bull haven't had that with Albon. He was too busy passing Raikkonen around the outside of Copse for P15, which is apparently a great move. Exactly.
No, to be fair, good move, but
yeah, exactly.
Shouldn't
On
be
a car,
P15 in a Red Bull.
Yes,
Let's
he's
put
in a
that in
race-winning
there.
car, and he's fighting a pensioner. But Albon's not going to rest for a year. He's having his critics. He can take a break.
He's been the punching bag for a season.
Exactly. So. There's definitely a new punching bag this year.
Bottas.
Slightly further down the grid. Oh no, there's one up there as well.
We've got two this year.
There's two. We've got two.
There's two. There's two. And so I've got Red Bull in second, but I really hope I'm proved wrong, and I do think it'll be close. I think it might be a yo-yo. I mean, I think we'll see a phase of the season where maybe at the start of the season, Red Bull are on top, and then Mercedes might fight back, and then we might see because Red Bull always are strong at the end of the season. And I thought about this the other day. Actually, it's a bit of a random one, but Red Bull were always extremely strong around Mexico. Imagine Perez winning around Mexico. I mean, that would just be insane. I mean, they would be partying out on the streets for weeks on end.
Even
if he gets on the podium, it would be still be insane.
True.
But anyway, let's not get bogged down in that. So I've got Red Bull in second. I think no brainer really. Verstappen's going to win the teammate battle. But I just could be really, really excited. I just hope it's going to be an exciting year.
So, I'm not believing anything from Red Bull.
I
will only believe anything from Red Bull if both Mercedes don't finish the first 4 races of a season and their engine is 10 kilometers down on power compared to the Red Bull. I think they're going to be second best, obviously, because if they get beaten by a midfield team, that is embarrassing. I don't think they're going to beat Mercedes. I don't think they're going to really fight Mercedes. It could be closer, and for the sake of the sport, I hope it's closer. But if I'm looking at it with a realistic approach, I just don't see any sign as to why Red Bull were going to be challenging Mercedes. They obviously at the end of the season they're always better, so they can get more hype going into the next season for when they then qualify 5/10 off at round one. I think their car might probably suit Bahrain a bit more for the start of the season, so there's the possibility of that. But I don't want to seem like I'm being too harsh, but I just think Mercedes are the best team on the grid. No one can disagree about that. I think they're going to come with another good car. I think Red Bull are going to be just stuck in no man's land with the occasional couple of races. Perez, as you said, is a very good signing for them because obviously he's going to help in the closer races, help them push Mercedes in a strategical aspect. But I don't think they're going to beat Mercedes. I mean, someone said to me the other day, they're like, "Oh, if a Bottas has another stinker of a season, they could generally beat them." It's like, well, no, because even with Red Bull getting, say, an extra 120, 130 points across the season from Perez, they're still going to be nowhere near what the 2020 Mercedes was capable of. That car missed Hamilton for a race and had Bottas doing pirouettes in a Turkish car park, and they still obliterated the season. So I'm being
You're not buying
reserved.
it, yeah? You're not convinced?
No, I'm not buying stock. I'm saving my money, and I'm waiting until they've actually shown something in a representative session.
Well, it's funny you should say that because I have fallen into the trap of Red Bull, and I've put them first.
Oh, Joel!
Dr. Marco's tricks
Right.
have been played.
I've fallen into the trap.
He's been
So
brainwashed.
I'll give you a good reason for this now. So I think Red Bull, I don't think they're going to have the best car on the grid. Still think Mercedes is going to have the best car on the grid. But I think they're going to be close enough to a point where it comes down to driver ability and the driver pairings. And I think Red Bull have a better driver pairing than Mercedes. So I think on that front, if it's very, very close, this is dependent on how close they are. If they're very close, I do think Red Bull are going to have the upper hand because I simply think the signing of Perez, I think once he's fully adapted into the team, hopefully the sooner the better, really, for their chances. But I think if Perez adapts into the team well and does the job that Ricciardo and Verstappen had, like in 2017, 2018, where they can really sort of challenge Mercedes on the strategical front of things, I think they should have him. And I think even though Verstappen will probably beat Perez, I don't think it's going to be a total annihilation that we've seen Verstappen do with Gasly and Albon. I think Perez is going to do exactly the job Red Bull want from him, and I think that's why I put them top, because I just think this pairing, I think it excites me a lot, because I think finally, if Red Bull do deliver a good car, or deliver a car that's capable, because this is an evolution of the regulations and the previous chassis, and Red Bull have gotten the notoriety of being very good at the end of the season. So I think if they can build on that momentum, which they can do, the best opportunity, given that this is not a major regulation change, this is an evolution, I do think Red Bull could have the upper hand.
Oh, fair enough. And the last team then, Mercedes. I'm looking at my notes here. I'm not even sure I backed this, but 304 laps is the least amount, which I'm pretty sure it is true, but I mean that just doesn't really look right. We've seen the last few years they have just been absolutely flawless in preseason testing. And the fastest lap was a 1:30.0 set by Hamilton on the C5s, which wasn't that near the top. But yeah, it's just, I don't think anyone's naive enough to write them off completely. But I think the most important thing is there is work to do. Like you saw in 2019, where in week one they were not that good, and they just brought a whole new car.
They had the safety of doing that though. This year they don't.
Exactly.
Which is
this year. I mean, they're doing a shakedown, a testing, a filming day right now. And there's been a bit of a debate. It was, are they just going to bring a new car and just test out the parts? It's so complex. I mean, are they going to bring a new car? I mean, you can't bring a new car, but they probably will bring updates into FP1.
I think there'll be a new car by FP2.
You can't bring it. No, it won't be a new car though.
There'll be not a full new one, but there'll be some.
But there'll be changes.
Of major things.
But yeah, like we've seen, they are undoubtedly the best run team on the grid, and they work incredibly hard, and they never rest on their laurels. They never get complacent. So they will fix these issues and they will get on top of them at some point. But right now,
Depends
I
when.
think it's fair to say, yeah, and when. But I think right now it's fair to say that Red Bull do hold the advantage over them. And I'll just run through this now. I mean, they had issues on Friday morning with Bottas. He only did 6 laps on the first morning session. Hamilton spun on day 2 and brought out the red flag, and then he spun again on day 3, going on to trying to do a fast lap. There is rear end instability there. We know that those reg changes, the floor has been changed, so it's slightly sort of tapered off, and you can't have as many elements on it. So that is where it comes from. And yeah, like I say, no one's silly enough to write them off, but this has been a bit of a struggle for them, and that's why they're going to have to work hard. I still think they're going to finish first in the championship overall, because I just think they're too good to struggle for much longer. I think they're just, inevitable, really. And I think Hamilton will come out on top of the 2 drivers, obviously, and also be world champion. And
crazy prediction.
Crazy prediction there. What do you guys think? Where do you guys? Well, I know really, but
I am going to say the most groundbreaking thing. I think that Mercedes are going to finish on top. Ooh. No, I think that because of the way they ran, they will find a solution quite quickly to whatever issue they have. Some of it might be down to some driver input as well. Hamilton might have to adapt something a little bit, and I think we all know that he has that adaptation ability in his skill set, obviously. Maybe at the start of the season they might be a little bit off where they want to be, but they could still be off where they want to be, and they could be 5/10 up the road. That's Mercedes' standards. That's how high they are. Obviously Hamilton's going to beat Bottas because it's Bottas. He's not really a championship threat, and if he is a championship threat, Hamilton has done something dramatically wrong in his preseason preparations. I think they're going to beat Red Bull. I don't think it's going to be as close as 550 points or whatever they had last year or something like that. But I think it'll be 80 to 100 points ahead of Red Bull.
Obviously, I've put Mercedes second on my list. Now, I think the preseason Mercedes had obviously was shocking. And obviously, I think today they've been doing a filming day of some sort. It's a bit unsure about whether they're actually sort of testing a whole new sort of component in the car or whatever, or it's genuinely just a filming day. But I think the main reasons I've put Mercedes second is, for a start, the car doesn't, I think the car is fast, but I don't think it's an easy car to drive. It looks like it's a very difficult car to get on top of. But if you do get on top of it, it can be very rewarding. And I think as well, then the second reason is I just don't think when it comes to, if the 2 cars are close, both Red Bull and Mercedes, I don't think Bottas has got it in him to be the perfect deputy to really sort of secure Mercedes that constructors title. Because when you look back to 2018, obviously Ferrari and Mercedes in a very sort of tight battle, and even though Mercedes did win in the end, that was mainly down to Lewis's sort of dominance in the team and how good he was that year's season, arguably his best season in the sport. But I think with Bottas that year, he was winless and he came 5th, which kind of says a lot when it comes to being in high pressure situations, which I think is arguably the biggest title challenge we've had in 2018. Bottas in 2019, he won a few races, but he was under no pressure at all. He was just in a bit of a no man's land in 2nd place. And the sort of the same here in 2020, although Verstappen was a little bit closer this time. But I do think this year's going to be the year when, if Red Bull are close enough, I don't think Bottas is going to be able to be the perfect second driver for Mercedes to secure that constructors title. I do think it's going to slip out of their park and go into the hands of Red Bull.
All right, so that has been the constructor predictions. I'm now going to ask the guy. Well, we've actually pre-prepared them some quick fire questions. I'm going to reveal them, and then we're going to give a little explanation to them. So the first one I have is which driver will complete the fewest laps? Now, I had Mick Schumacher, Nat had Kimi Raikkonen, and Joel, you had Nikita Mazepin. I had Schumacher because I just think there'll probably be some unreliability there, and he might get involved in a few incidents. That's it, really.
I put Kimi because I think that I was torn between the Haas and Kimi, but I think it's going to be Kimi. He'll probably be mainly just like reliability or something like that. Maybe a couple of stupid accidents that might not be his fault, but he still gets caught up in.
I've put down Mazepin for the fact that I think he's a very raw driver. I still think his racecraft could do a lot of improvement, and I think this year we're going to see a lot of his sort of aggression
Idiocy.
come through. Yeah, idiocy, stupidity. Because last year, in F2, he made some pretty stupid maneuvers. Like I think it was Belgium. I think it was on the last lap when he's battling Tsunoda for the win. I think it was last 2 laps. I think it was, and he just kept shutting the door on him. And I think in F2 you get away with it a bit more because the cars in F2 are built for a little bit more,
All right,
bit more
let's not
bangs.
get bogged down in Mazepin. Okay, so let's
Yeah,
move on.
but it's just I just think Mazepin anyway. I think he's a very raw driver. So
Okay, so races with the most the race with the most DNFs. I went Bahrain, Nat went Baku, and Joel went Monaco. I went Bahrain because it's the first race, and we might see some unreliability and rustiness because, like we saw in Austria last year, I don't think there are very many finishes for that race.
I went Baku purely because of the fact it's Baku and we have Nikita Mazepin on the grid.
You can only crash once.
I've put down Monaco on mine, simply because of the fact I think there's a lot of they haven't been in 2 years, and Monaco's a very very demanding circuit, and
I
I
just
believe
forgot where turn 3 is.
I believe there's a good few drivers on that grid. I think Tsunoda hasn't raced at Monaco,
Tsunoda's never driven Monaco.
and I don't think there's
That's crazy.
And I think the other 2 drivers as well, the other 2 F2 boys, and even the whole grid, they haven't been there for 2 years, and the cars have changed a lot since then. So it's going to be quite interesting to see. I think we're going to see a lot of accidents in that race, especially if it's as for weather.
So who will finish 10th in the Drivers' Championship? I've gone for Mr. Norris. Matt went for Sainz, and Joe went for Gasly. I've gone for Norris because I have really. It's so tight. You could put anyone in there really that you wanted to, and probably justify it. Nat, you've gone for Sainz, but probably because of
I put
Gonna be in the
Sainz there
Ferrari?
because that's sort of where I think the Ferrari will be. I think lower top 10 will probably be where both drivers finish in the standings.
Yeah, I've put Gasly. I think he's just going to be really good this season. I think he's going to pull out some really good results over the course of the season, and I think his consistency as well is going to play a part in him getting 10th this year.
Which track will the World Drivers' Champion be crowned? I've rather optimistically put Abu Dhabi, therefore indicating it will go down to the wire. Nat's gone rather differently and put Japan, and Joel's put Brazil. Not feeling very confident then, Nat.
No, well, we had a 17 race calendar last season. Hamilton wrapped up in Portugal. So, I think it's probably going to finish at Japan. And to be honest, I would rather like it to finish at Japan. I think that's quite a historic place to get your 8th world title.
But do you know how early Japan is in the calendar?
Yeah,
it is really early.
It's like race 17 out of 23.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
It's
if
very
Hamilton can win
bold.
the championship before 17 races, I think he can win it there.
So you think he'll be crowned at Japan, round 17
I think he'll
out
be
of
crowned
23?
at Japan. Yeah.
Very optimistic thinking.
Fair, Joel, you're round 20 out of 23.
I've put Brazil because I think
a bit less optimistic, but
I think it's a little. Yeah, I've kind of gone 50-50 really on this one, and I think the reason for it, I think it's going to be much closer this year. I hope, I really do hope, but I don't think it's going to go right down to the wire. I think there'll be like a key point in the season where the whole dynamic of the season will change. I don't know what it'll be, but I think it's going to be that like a big turning point, sort of like Singapore 2017. So I think we're going to get one of them, and that's going to sort of swing the pendulum in favour of a driver that's going to help them wrap up the title a little bit earlier.
yeah, fair enough.
So I then asked, who will win the most Driver of the Day awards? I went for Verstappen. Matt picked two, which was not really in the rules. Picked Max or Mick.
It's
And,
either or. Oh, thank you very much.
Right, and Joel picked Russell. I mean, Verstappen, he won it last year, and he'll probably do it again. He'll probably get a few wins. He'll probably get more wins than he did last year. So, yeah, I've just got Verstappen. He has a lot of fans.
Yeah. I was torn between Max and Mick, and I couldn't really pick, so I just picked them both. Max, I was thinking of him because obviously, his Orange Army are quite prominent. But also I put Mick because I think a lot of a certain group of Twitter, or a certain group of the fan base will feel very sorry for him because of he should be in a better suit, apparently.
A super drive from 19th to 17th.
Yeah, it'll be the same sort of thing as when Harry Anto started winning all of the
Oh yeah, I remember
Driver
that.
of the Days in
And they had to
2016.
totally exclude it, but they didn't even mention it. But
Yeah.
everyone was voted like a country mile. I've got down Russell simply because I believe that I think he's going to do some really good drives this season. Don't get me wrong, but the people are still living in the mindset that Williams are how they are in 2019. I think the Williams car's going to be better this year and capable of getting occasional points, but people are still visioning Williams as if they were in 2019, where they're miles off.
Yeah,
so I think
well,
it's going to sort of inflate his performances quite a bit because of that.
If the Williams is like what Russell says it is, if it's going to be a very peaky car and it'll be a yo-yo car, on the good days he could finish easily in like top 8 or something,
Yeah.
So maybe
he almost did that at like Mugello anyway.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's because there was about 4 finishes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
moving on.
Still.
I asked who will win the DHL fastest lap championship.
Prestigious
This is
championship.
when you add up. Is it a champion? No, it's not a championship. It's just whoever gets the most fastest laps. Hamilton won it last year, and I've gone Hamilton again. Nat went Sergio Perez, and Joel went, for some reason, Bottas.
Yeah. So I've gone for Bottas simply because I think Mercedes are going to try and use him to kind of help with their constructors' effort. So I think there's going to be some races. I think we're going to see more of this where teams are going to tactically use their drivers or second drivers for the fastest lap, extra point for the constructors' championship. So that's what my thinking has come down to, because I don't think Bottas is going to be challenging for race wins. So they're just going to simply pop him in the pits on a fresh set of tyres.
Do you think 4th or 5th or whatever is going to be 25 seconds behind? I don't think it's going to happen.
It depends. It depends on the race situation, but I just think that's what we're going to see a bit of this season. Teams pitting their driver or second driver to get that extra point in. It just depends really on the race circumstance.
See, I went for Perez, sort of in the same mindset of Joel, was that they're going to use a second driver to try and take points away. But I also think, because I don't think Red Bull are going to be as close to Mercedes as what everyone thinks. So I think they're just going to be like, oh, well, it's lap 55 out of 62. Let's just put him in the pits. We've got 50 seconds back to the nearest car. He's in 4th place. Hamilton's got, we're first, it's 2nd and 4th or whatever. Bottas is 20 seconds up the road, something like that. Just pit and try and get a fastest lap to take it away from Mercedes. That's what I think. So I think it'll be Perez.
Okay, so I've not actually prepared these. Bit of just putting these onto you guys straight away. Who is your surprise of the season? I'm going to hand it to you guys while I think of mine.
So I've gone for Giovinazzi. I think he's going to be the surprise of the season. I think it might not be, an incredible surprise of the season, but I think he's going to be much better than Raikkonen. And I think he's going to have some standout performances.
Right. I was close to putting Giovinazzi, in fact, but I've kind of shifted towards Ocon. Simply because I believe Ocon's going to be a much better driver that we saw last year. And I think we are going to see more of what we saw in 2017, 2018, where he's unbelievably consistent. Hopefully we do, because he is a very good driver. And I do think it's going to be quite a surprise this season.
Oh, God.
Yeah, you finished your thinking.
I'm going to say Nikita Mazepin.
Oh,
because
no.
I think he's going to out-qualify Mick. I'm going to say he's going to win the qualifying battle. And I hope I don't get cancelled for saying this.
That's it, we're cancelled.
Oh, sorry, guys.
You've ruined
That's
it.
Over. Wrap it up. No, I just think, I mean, I think people...
people are going to hate on him.
No, he's fast,
or
they just choose to ignore the fact he's fast. So I think if he does out-qualify Mick, I mean, it's just going to be like, Hang on,
I mean, let's be honest.
you're not supposed to do that. So
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
that's what I've gone for.
know,
Okay, and to counter that, disappointment of the season. I'm once again going to hand it to you guys while I think of my answer.
for disappointment this season, I'm gonna go with Norris. I think
Ooh.
I think that if it goes wrong, and if he doesn't perform to the way he should be with Ricardo, I think he's going to probably end up there. Because I can't go for a team. Because like teams are just too easy to say like, oh, disappointment of the season, I'm going to go with Haas because they're going to be really slow at the back. It's like, yeah, that's obvious. So you've got to try and then you can't go with the drivers either because most of the drivers are rookies. So yeah, I'm going to go Norris. Not in a bad thing. I think that if it goes wrong, it'll go wrong massively for him.
Now, I'm actually really struggling with this one. Actually, I think it's quite hard to pinpoint who do you think's actually gonna be a disappointment because it varies on the scale of like their expectations. But I
And
think for
context.
yeah, exactly. And I think my disappointment of the season, I'm leaning towards someone like Bottas. And I think even though there's not
You
much
can't be
really
disappointed
yeah, you
if you
can't be
have
disappointed
no
about it.
expectations
Yeah,
of him.
exactly. The expectations are low for him anyway, but I think he's going to even fall below them because I'm seeing people who are
Wow.
like, "Oh, this is going to be
The bar
Bottas' year
is
because
literally in
Hamilton's."
hell.
Yeah, well, I think as
Bar's
it
in
is,
hell. He's
like,
going to hit
have you seen
Australia.
people? Yeah, you've seen people say,
That's where he's going to go.
yeah, you've seen people say like, "Oh yeah, Bottas could like, challenge Hamilton because Hamilton's getting old, or Hamilton's only got this and this, and." But I think every single time that happens, it's like he gets worse every year, and I think people that are saying that he's actually a title contender this season are just it boggles the mind how people can be serious about him. I just don't think. I think he's going to be woeful this year. I just think it's going to have an absolute howler of a year.
Are those people
All right, okay,
in your head?
let's move on. Let's move on. Mine. Well, you guys put him as your surprise. I'm gonna go Giovinazzi. I just
Fair play.
think he's just so uninspiring.
Because the
Really.
bar is so low.
Yeah, I mean,
gets
he's
sick
only
and he'll be like,
there
yeah.
because of his passport.
Yeah.
Alfa Romeo wanted
Definitely.
an Italian driver, and he's
Yeah.
Italian, so that's it.
And
Really,
he's a
I just
proper
think.
Italian. He's a proper pizza de pasta Italian. He's
Whatever that means.
Yeah.
So that's why I've gone for Giovinazzi, and I'm gonna now ask some questions, yes or no questions. I just literally want you guys just to say yes or no and give no explanation. Okay, so Mazepin will receive a race ban. I'm going for yes.
I'm going for no.
I'm also going for no.
Okay. Russell will whitewash Latifi in qualifying again. I'm going yes.
I'm going yes, but it won't be as much as last season in terms of the gap.
I'm also going to go yes.
Okay. McLaren will win a race. Yes.
No.
Yes.
Okay. Sprint races will be scrapped halfway through. No.
Yes, please.
I've gone for no.
Okay. Alonso returns to the podium. Yes.
No.
Nope.
One race has 20 classified finishes. Yes.
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 Okay, then. So if we I think what we do next is just quickly go through, just recap our standings for the teams. So from 10th to 1st, I have Haas, Williams, Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri, Alpine, Ferrari, McLaren, Aston Martin, Red Bull, and Mercedes.
I have for my top 10, I have 10th Haas, then Williams, Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri, Alpine, Ferrari, Aston Martin, McLaren, Red Bull, and Mercedes top of the pile.
Right, so my team rankings, I've got in 10th, Haas, 9th, Williams, 8th, Alfa Romeo, 7th, AlphaTauri, 6th, Alpine, 5th, Ferrari, 4th, Aston Martin, 3rd, McLaren, 2nd, Mercedes, and top of the standings, I've got Red Bull.
So there we have it. That has been our preview and prediction for the 2021 F1 season. We hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, give it a like. If you disagree with some of our predictions, just leave it in the comments. Try try and get a little discussion going, and interesting to see what your predictions are. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you put the notification bell on so you don't miss an uploads. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. See you later.